Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. You know, I think all of the people in this room have good intentions. And all of us have faced many similar issues. Many of us are parents of school-aged children, as I am. And I can tell you it has not been easy at all to watch those 3 children go through this pandemic and what has been happening what hasn't been happening in our schools. To have my oldest daughter not be able to finish her 8th grade year, not to have a graduation, and to start freshman year of high school completely on distance learning for months and months and months, to miss out on that interaction that she has with her, to see the effect on her mental health. And so I think we have to have a sober assessment here today. And we have to say that California gets an F. It gets an F in how it dealt with education. California deemed education not essential. That's the fact. We kept many industries going, operating. We deemed those industries essential. And we deemed schools and small businesses and other industries not essential. And that's what happened. And it's a travesty that happened on our watch. Now, let me be fair. I think the lion's share of the blame goes with this governor. Because the reason that your schools are not open right now, the reason why the gentleman from Sacramento and my home school district are not open right now is because of the blueprint framework. Schools that want to open cannot open because they're in purple tier. And the governor is the one who established that policy, not with us, not in through a due process, legislative process that should be the way that policies are enacted in a democratic government, but by one man making all of those decisions. And that is the reason that our schools are still closed in many communities, in far too many communities. It is because of the blueprint framework. And the audacity of this man to then blame us, to then blame the legislature and saying we're dragging our feet when he's the one who has kept them closed this whole time. And if he used that arbitrary power, he could open schools tomorrow. But he has not. That is the reason why we're in the situation that we find ourselves. And we all have good intentions. But look, folks, let's be honest. The CDC in December said that we could open schools safely. In December. And here we are in March, debating and finally passing some legislation that, look, at best, for most schools around the state of California, gets them opened in April in a hybrid model that we've all talked about does not work for working parents. You think that's easy for working parents to say, okay, I'm going to go half days, drop the kid off at 8, and I'll come back and pick up at noon, 1 o'clock? How's that going to work? And we act like this is good policy, that we've solved all the problems, by doing this today. We get an F. California gets an F in how it dealt with education, period. And it's been devastating. We are going to be living with this for many years to come. And we need to have that sober assessment here. And I agree with my colleague from San Diego. It isn't equitable because communities like mine already get shortchanged in how funding is allocated. And many of those schools in those rural areas actually took the money from last year and they reopened. And they spent the money on PPE, on all the things that it takes to help reopen these schools safely. And they spent it, and some of the larger urban districts didn't spend a dime of that on reopening. They stayed closed. And now under this new allocation this year, my rules are going to get shortchanged once again because the allocation stays the same. There's no minimum rural funding mechanism that I and others have advocated for. It's not in this bill. So it didn't get addressed. That's an issue that didn't get addressed. But let's not fool ourselves. We should never let this happen again, what occurred here in California. Many other states have been open safely. Their kids have been back in school. We haven't. That is mostly on the governor, but it's also on us. Thank you, members.